This segment is brought to you by Jig Masters. Step up your game with high-quality performance jigs, spinner baits, buzz baits, and more from jigmasters.com. And always, when in doubt, get the jig out.
Welcome to the Bass, Kayak, and Beers podcast on the Paddle and Fin Network. On this podcast, we'll be talking about life and kayak fishing. Every week, we'll have a special guest, whether it's a tournament angler, a content creator, or just a regular guy or girl who just loves to go kayak fishing. So grab a cold beer, sit back, and enjoy the show. Bass, Kayak, and Beers is sponsored in part by Douglas Rod. Go to douglasoutdoors.com to check out their full lineup and locate your nearest authorized dealer. All right, boys and girls, once again, welcome to the Bass, Kayak, and Beers. I got today Josh Eldridge, a.k.a. Trash Panda. Welcome again, buddy. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you, bud?
Thank you for coming in. Pretty good, man. Last time you came here, we were talking a little bit about your life and how you got into kayak fishing and all that. This time, Josh, once again, Trash Panda is here, and we're going to be talking about his podcast, which is the Final Cast with Brad Hicks. Brad Hicks couldn't join us today, but what we're going to do is, if you don't know their podcast, go check it out. Is Thursdays, right?
Yep, every Thursday.
Every Thursday morning. It's called the Final Cast, and they do product reviews of most of the popular products that's out there on the market. They've had guys from the Z-Man, from Torpedo, right?
Yep.
Recently, you got the guys from the Spot Lock.
Yeah, from Motor Guide, we have Shane
Motor
Lamar.
Guide.
Yep.
Yeah, so what we're going to be talking about, he's not going to review any products, but Josh is here to kind of like have his opinion and my opinion on whether certain products are game changers, which is like the most overused word in kayak fishing, or is it just hype? So we're going to run through a couple of them. Some of them we're just going to come. We already kind of talked about other them, so we'll go, as the show progresses and we see how much time we'll add a couple of there and there. So anyways, Josh, first product that you want to talk about, game changer or hype, which one would you pick?
As in the product or like something that I think was a game changer? What do you
Either
mean?
one. What are the most popular products? Let's start off with I don't want to start off with all the good ones. I want to leave something till the end so people get engaged. But let's start off with like jackhammers.
Okay.
Because that's always like a good polarizing subject or bait, I should say, where some people think it's overpriced, some people swear by it. What is your thoughts? Game changer or hype, considering the price?
I think that it was a game changer, but I think it was a game changer in the sense for the chatterbait world itself. I wasn't a fan of chatterbaits till I threw a jackhammer. I threw them a little bit, but I always kind of felt they were a little on the cheap side. But I did start, to be honest, though, and to give them a fair shake here, is I started out with the original chatterbait, and I never threw another one again until I started throwing a jackhammer. And I just started throwing jackhammers last year. The reason being, though, is I was in a paddle kayak for so long that I rarely fished lakes. So most of the time, a lot of my fishing was in the rivers, and the chatterbait, I didn't think it was the best lure to be throwing in for river smallmouth. Last year, once I got a paddle or a pedal drive kayak, I started throwing it in the lakes. And I think what sold me on that bait was the ability that those baits had to go through vegetation and come out clean, and because there's not a lot of hard baits out there that you can throw that come through vegetation. You can't throw anything with treble hooks on it, and that kind of thing. So when I went somewhere that it was chock full of weeds. I mean, the whole place is nothing but vegetation. There was, not very much water in place of, clearings and stuff like that. So when I threw that chatterbait, I was like, man, this is a good bait. The more I threw it, I started catching more fish. So I think that I don't know that was a game changer in regards to fishing in general, but definitely it was to its little, subcategory within itself. Like, I think it changed a lot of people's views on the chatterbait itself and became much, much, much more popular. Now, do I think that it's worth the money that it is? Yes and no. I mean, paying attention to things, especially in the kayak industry and just things in general, anytime that you find something that starts selling well, that price is always going to go up. So if it's a decent product and it sells well, that price is going to get marked up because people tend to buy it no matter what if they really believe in it. So I do think it's, on the overpriced side. I don't think that it's much over. I do, if you pick up some of the other jackhammers out there on the market, you can see, the other chatterbaits, like say within Z-Man. If you look at an original chatterbait versus a, jackhammer, there's a big difference in the quality of the components there.
And price.
Yeah. And I mean, a Project Z, you can see the difference in the components in that. It's a better quality, than the original. So overall, like, I think that it's worth it. I still do think that it's a little overpriced, but it's like that with a lot of stuff. You're going to hear that from me a lot too tonight, by the way. So
very politically correct.
Yeah. What do you think?
I think it's worth it. There's ways to get them cheaper. I recently started the membership with Catchco, which is like you pay $40. And I was like, I'm going to try it because I do throw the jackhammer a lot, and both rivers and lakes, and it has worked great for me. More so than the original chatterbait, or even the 9K Lures chatterbait, which I've used and I've caught fish before, and even the Thunder Cricket.
Yeah.
To me, it's worth it because the quality of it. It's great quality. The craftsmanship on it, like you said, this head design to make it go through debris or grass and riprap without getting hang up as much there's been thought and quality into that design, and that's going to cost money. There's a lot of researches you have to do to make it work in that way and be effective on it. It's not just going through that drawing board is a lot of investment on it. There's a lot of, like, people understand there's a lot of engineering that goes behind it.
Right.
The fact that blade starts vibrating no matter how slow or how fast you reel it, as soon as it hit the water, it starts vibrating. Where even some of the like the cross-eye for Z-Man, I'll say it's a piece of crap. I've had the cross-eye for Z-Man. I tried it to say, well, I don't want to spend so much on a chatterbait. Let me see if there's another chatterbait out there that I can work. And I tried the Z-Man cross-eye. That's a piece of crap. Yeah. I don't like it. Sometimes I have to like snap the rod in order to get that blade to engage. Whereas I don't have that problem with the Z-Man jackhammer. Plus, and I think Fluke Master did a great breakdown video on it on his YouTube channel, and he really does go into things that I didn't know. And it's like the way that head and that blade is attached, and like the difference between that chatterbait and most chatterbaits out there is that the blade is actually hitting the head. And I do have some chatterbaits that I've used for a long time, and you can see on each side of the head where the blade hits, it's all worn out. And that clicking sound and the material that it's used for the head makes a very high-pitched sound from what I understand. And I really do think they are bass to bite more so than any other chatterbait out there. And big bass too. Like, I've caught some, I mean, my personal best is 22 and a quarter or 22 and a half. And I caught it on the jackhammer.
Yeah.
So I think it's a game changer, in my opinion.
Yeah. I'm not 100% sure of this because I can't remember offhand. But for those who have questions about the jackhammer or chatterbaits in general, please go back in the final cast episode. It was one of the it might have been the first episode that we did with Glenn Young from Z-Man. And we broke down the whole lineup pretty much of the chatterbaits that were available at the time. There's a lot of good information there. You may know this because I can't remember offhand, but I also thought not only was the head a little bit different material, but I thought the blade might be different too. And I can't remember though, but the blade material might have been changed as well to help get a different sound that you're talking about from where it's hitting the head of the the lead head part of the bait itself. So, those things do make a big, huge difference. Like I said, like you mentioned about how fast that blade starts vibrating, and that's what I noticed too. That's what kind of made it a really interesting choice, and why I started buying them was for that reason only. Because I remember throwing my original chatterbait, and I'm like, there was times where that thing didn't start up for like halfway through the retrieve. Like if you slowed down, it would stop. If you sped up, it seemed to get out of whack a little bit. Like you had to find a sweet spot. And with the jackhammer, if you're just reeling, whether it's fast or slow, it's usually vibrating unless it's got something stuck on it. So,
yeah. And like I said, I don't know if I even finished what I was saying about going to catch. And I'm not promoting. No, it wasn't you. I think I kind of come myself out of that sentence. I'm not promoting Catchco. What I did is I went to Catchco. I figured I run through a lot of jackhammers. So if I can get in my Catchco, which is like $3 or $4 cheaper, than buying it at a local tackle shop, then to me, I was like, yeah. The way I bought it by the time the membership's over by a year, I probably save $40. And there's other stuff you can get a lot cheaper too. So that's, if you want to get it cheaper, that might be an option. Keep in mind it's like a $40 membership. So
you can get them
price up front.
You can get them through the JDM market, the Japanese market, for a significant amount less too. I tried to look at it and I kind of didn't understand what I was looking at. So, but if I remember correctly, Dustin, he was ordering them like that, and he was like, it's a like $4 or $5 cheaper, like you were saying. Like it was a significant amount. The only problem with that is, especially last year with the way COVID was, where the supply chains were so messed up. If you ordered those, it could be probably months before you would actually receive them because of how behind all the shipping containers are. So.
Yeah, I even went to like my local tackle shops, kayak shops, Bass Pro. They were all ran out of jackhammers. Even Castro. I was like,
Field and Stream had ordered them, sold out of them last year, and I went in to buy them, and they're like, we've sold out, and we have no idea when we're going to get new ones.
Yeah.
I was like, all right.
Seems like that's a trend on going through everything, man. But anyways, we'll see.
Cool.
But okay, so let's see what other we talked about. Let's talk about the Motor Guide, because you had the people from Motor Guide on your show, and I don't know, you don't own a Motor Guide, but you've used them. You have friends that use them. Your opinion, game changer or hype? What do you like about it? Is it worth the price?
It's a relatively cheaper trolling motor in regards to what you can get. You're looking at around a $1,200 price tag with the GPS pinpoint. I think it's a game changer. I think it's great for. A trolling motor is been around for a long time, and there's so many obvious like benefits of having one, where you could cover water, you can pinpoint where you're at and fish a spot without having to anchor, which is something I despise doing in a kayak.
Yeah.
So that's where it shines, in my opinion, in comparison of like your outboard style motors, like a Torqeedo or a Bixby or whatever, is the fact that you can anchor up and do that and, stay on a spot. Or you can set the speed real low, put a heading set on it, and just go and fish a bank and keep moving instead of. There's nothing I hate more than being in a kayak hitting a spot, catching a fish, fishing it, and then realizing, all right, I got to move on, and then pulling your anchor. It's so much waste of time, especially if you're into the tournament scene. It's that's a game changer. That's a game changer, especially for tournament anglers. I think that the price tag is not bad on a motor guide in comparison to what Torqeedo or, a Bixby's comparable to it, but there's a lot of stuff that you have to buy to put those outboards, those motors on that you don't have to do necessarily with a, as far as like the steering type of stuff, you know what I mean? Like if you're going to go and you're going to get the pinpoint GPS, you're going to have a handheld remote where you can control it that way. I've heard of guys even mounting the foot pedal style in their kayaks, that type of thing. So when you get a Torqeedo, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it as far as getting steering cables and this and that. And if you're going to do hand steering, you got a throttle control, you've got, you know what I mean? There's just a lot of stuff to kind of go into it. But at the same time, the cost of those has the battery in it, those outboard style, like the Bixby and the Torqeedo. So when you do add the cost of the battery to the XI3 for motor guide, you are getting up there pretty close to what you could get a Torqeedo potentially for, especially if it's used. The new 1103 is pretty high up there. You're looking around $3,000 and then whatever kind of steering stuff you need to try to get for it. But and Bixby is around 1,100, I think, and that still needs the mount and the steering stuff put on it too. So the Bixby's around an 1,100 with just the motor and the battery, and like I said, you have to buy probably like $500 extra worth of stuff or close to it, possibly. But I think it's a great thing. The thing that impressed me about Motor Guide and XI3 was they saw the market for what people were doing with it, and they were buying them, and they were cutting down the shafts, and they were like, you know what, let's just go ahead and make the 36-inch shaft. And I love that about companies. I love companies that are in the fishing industry that see the growth in the kayak industry, and then they try to get their piece in there. And that was a great idea, because every time you cut that stupid shaft down, you void your warranty. So they were like, we don't want guys who want to buy our motors not able to take advantage of that,
That's a good point. Yeah, and then when you see stuff like that, you kind of appreciate it, because it shows that they're listening, to kind of to their buyers, to the people that love this sport, and that's always good when you get some big company to kind of listen to what you want and then come through with it. You always want to support that. Now, I haven't used a motor. I'm not against motors. I just like the exercise of it. I'm not this old purist, like, oh no, motors are the devil, they should be bad. No, if you want to have a motor on your kayak, by all means have it. I know, and it depends. If you're going out fishing, I know guys that go fishing because they want to feed their families. That's one way to do it. And if a motor helps you, go ahead. You're doing it for a different reason than a tournament angler does it, or somebody that's just a weekend warrior that just want to have fun with the kids and the family. I personally can't comment on whether it's great or bad. I do think, though, that they have their place in the sport, and in the water. Like when you're talking about, and talking about specifically tournaments, right? When we're talking about fishing like the Bassmasters at Lake Fork, which was on spawning, the guys that won the first place and second place, they were both on Outback, and I think I know the first place, he didn't have a motor on his, and I think the guy in second place didn't have either. A lot of guys did, but the problem was, it's like, well, you have this motor, now you're kind of obligated. You spend this amount of money to have spot lock, and what are you going to do? Beat the banks?
Right.
What's the point there? So you see that it has its place, but it's not a Swiss Army knife. It's not going to solve all your kayak fishing needs, because it shines when it's summer or winter and the bass are moving out of shallow water and moving into deeper water.
Yeah.
Where maybe you're on a, like, I know Brad Hicks does it a lot. When you're on a river and you're fighting the current, it shines there. But when you're fishing for spawning bass, it's not going to help you much, because what are you going to do? Use it in 2 foot of water? It's not really ideal, and you don't need it really. You're probably making more noise and stirring up more water than you need to. So it has its place, and with it, I mean, having that advantage of spot lock and holding on to a spot, like you said, not having to. I use the anchor, and I got used to it. But yeah, you get tired of it. I just actually installed the anchor trolling on my Hobie PA, and I was kind of delaying it because I hate to use it. But sometimes summer is coming up, and I know sometimes when it gets windy, it's worth the aggravation of throwing an anchor and bringing it back up with your anchor wizard, because, well, if it's windy and the bass are out there on deep, then it's worth it. But it's not fun at all.
No,
spend a lot
and
of
it's
time.
like, especially if you're following bass, you're following bait, and you're like, man, everything's moving, nothing's staying stationary for you. So it's like, that's where that motor can kind of help, because it's just going to speed you up, and that's why I kind of say, like, if you're just fishing for fun, it may not necessarily be that big of a deal to you. But if you're fishing a tournament and you need to cover water, that trolling motor is going to do good. But I'm a big believer in, like, the way the Torqeedo and Bixby set up. Those are kind of more for covering water in regards to getting from spot to spot. I mean, you can kind of run them in a sense, almost like a trolling motor, especially if you do foot control steering. You can set that on a low speed and fight the wind and use your feet to steer, and then that way you can kind of gauge, hey, I can sit here in this 10, 15 mile per hour wind facing it, and if I got control with my feet, I can still fish hands free at that point. I think that's the biggest thing with motors, especially with the trolling motor, is the ability to be hands free and to keep fishing. Anytime you're in a tournament, the more cast you have, the more chances you have to catch a nose fish. And so, that's going to help. If you're spending 5-10 minutes, per spot worrying about your anchor and pulling your anchor up, and do you have enough line out? Am I drifting still? Is the wind blowing me side to side to side? And, I'm losing that angle I need to cast at a particular area. It can get frustrating over time. But to mention one thing that I've heard recently about the motor guide, I'm going to point out a couple cons that I've learned of recently. Brad has one, and Brad's we think that it's his remote, but I don't know that he's 100% sure, but he thinks it's the remote. His trolling motor, this is a little on the dangerous side, is just taking off on its own. He'll be in a spot locked up, and then the motor just accelerates and takes off. And usually it's in a straight line, but he says it has turned on him a couple times as well. And so if you're not ready for something like that, it has the potential to toss you out of that kayak. I watched him do it, I don't know, 6 or 7 times on the river on Sunday. And it got to the point he got so frustrated, he just pulled it out of the water and stopped using it. So that is something to be wary of. I do know that the motor guide also was having some issues with their plugs. And if you listen to our podcast with Motor Guide with Shane Lamont, he's one of the pro staffers for them. He made a suggestion to everybody to change out the plugs. And I can't remember the brand name that he pointed out, but he said everybody's having a lot of success, but these plugs are getting burned up and melting and stuff. So those are 2 pretty kind of heavy duty issues. But Brad's remote issue, we think, might be because one of the last times he was out in a downpour, and those remotes aren't waterproof, which blows my mind. Anything that's fishing related that is not waterproof makes no sense to me at this point. So, I mean, I get it. There's going to be some stuff you don't waterproof, but like the fact that we still have, dry hatches on kayaks that aren't really waterproof just blows my mind. I don't understand how that's not up on a priority list. I mean, there's no reason to, that these things are getting used in tournaments and stuff like that. Like, obviously for fun fishing, you can get out of the rain. I don't mind fishing in the rain for the most part. My kayak's not the best one to do it in because it's not a sit on top and it doesn't have scupper plugs, so it can fill with water. But if you're in a tournament, and it's just raining, you still have a tournament to do. They don't shut down the tournament because of rain. So if your stuff stops working, that's no good. And I just don't understand why that remote would not be waterproof right off the bat. So
yeah, it's boggles the mind. I mean, there's ways to make it waterproof. I mean, and I understand maybe there's a cost involved, and maybe that cost of making it waterproof is gonna put it at a price point where it's not gonna be attractive anymore to buy. So you give, it's a lot of give and take.
Yeah, but here's the thing that I see in that. Okay, like that's great. But then these are the people that also call or write to these companies complaining and bashing them online. And this goes both ways for the consumer and for the company. The company ends up doing something crazy like replacing hundreds and hundreds of these remotes. So if they would have just built it right the first time, they would possibly save money. You know what I mean? Instead of sending out product, then that just gets turned back in. Or, and it just makes no sense. And then you've got the people who are getting it and they're just complaining about it. And it's like, okay, well, how valuable is your time? Would you have spent the extra $50 if that remote was made to be waterproof? And that would have, I would, you know what I mean? I'm a big believer. I'll spend the extra money if I know I've got something rock solid in my hand and that I know that I don't have to turn around and send back, wait around, lose time with that motor or whatever. You know what I mean? It's just that. To me, time is money, no matter whose time it is, whether it's the company's or yours. So that's why I always kind of get frustrated with some things to that nature, not with Motor Guide specifically, just in general. In being a consumer, you buy products or you get a service done, and you're like, I'm wasting my time, you're wasting your time, and that means everybody's losing money in the end.
That's a good point. All right. Another one that I wanted to talk about, and granted, both Josh and I haven't tried this, but we kind of saw this, and I'm throwing a curveball here at Josh because he didn't know I was coming up with this one. But the new Hobie Lynx, I wanted to touch a little bit on that because when it came out, I thought, okay, this could be a game changer because myself, like I have 2 kayaks now. And I really I have the Outback and the PA360. And I really thought, I could sell the Outback and try to get something like a kayak for my wife, but also a river kayak. But when I'm on the water, my wife uses the 360. I told her, take the 360. You're going to be safer in there. You're going to feel safer in there. It's a lot more stable. And if you get tired of pedaling, because it's a lot harder to pedal on the PA360 than it is on an Outback, we'll switch out. But for the most part, she uses that one. So I figured, okay, I'll get the Outback. I'll sell the Outback and see about getting a river kayak. And I was looking at the Bonafides and the Jacksons. And then I saw the video of the Outback, the Hobie Lynx. And I thought, okay, this is what I'm looking for, because I'm looking for a light boat that I can take on creeks and rivers where it's really shallow, and there's no boat ramps. There's a bunch of spots over here that I would love to take either my Outback or my PA360, but unless the water is flooded, the river is flooded, there's no way I can get, hold that big of equipment down whatever spot that I can. So I thought, okay, this would be perfect. The price point, though. I thought, okay, if I sell my Outback, I'll sell it. It's brand new hull because they got to replace. I can sell it for like 2,000, 2,500, somewhere in between. I hadn't looked at the Lynx price. When I saw it was 2,600. That's when it went from this is no longer game changer. This is just hype.
Yeah.
I love Hobie. I'm a huge Hobie fanboy. I love my Outback. I love my PA360, and we'll get into PA360 later. But $2,600 for that little thing. I understand it has the kick-up fins. I understand it's, you can go shallow, relatively shallow, not as shallow as if you're going on a paddleboat on a Bonafide or a Jackson Cruiser. That is way way too expensive, in my opinion, especially for the material it's been used. Have you seen it? What are your thoughts on it?
I've seen it. There's a guy local that we're doing an episode with tomorrow, which will air next Thursday. Yeah. He's one of the guys that he fishes out of the Strictly Sail guys. I don't know if he's on the team or not, but he does a lot of promoting stuff. His name's John Graves. And he got his hands on one, and he loves it, but he's a big Hobie fan though too. So he likes it. He's been using it. He really digs it because the mobility of it. I think that's where that boat's going to sell the best, is for those diehard Hobie guys that want the option to have their pedal drives and fish rivers and that sort of thing, and they love it because it's lightweight. Do I think that it's worth the price tag? I don't know, man. To be honest with you, most of the kayak fishing stuff I don't think lives up to what the price tags are on them, and that includes like my Jacksons and other kayak stuff out there. I think a lot of it can be overpriced, but it's a cool concept. I don't know. Like, the thing with Hobie is that they put in a lot of innovation within their drive system itself. I don't think that you see their actual kayaks evolve as much. The kayak, the hull itself changed drastically, and maybe like the designs of stuff that they bring out isn't like kind of off the wall. The Lynx just kind of seems like a paddle board with the drive system in it, just a smaller one, So to be honest with you, I couldn't say that I think that it is worth the money. I think it's a cool concept. It's good. I know a few guys that are going to love it because they take their Hobies in the river, and you're looking at PA-12s and PA-14s, and I just cringe watching them try to get their stuff down to the water, and I feel bad for them. And they're like, "You want to help me?" And I'm like, "Not really, but I will." And then everybody's trying to pack up like we did a river float, and you can't because dudes are rolling around with PA-14s, and you're like, everybody, this is a kayak that rolls solo. You put this thing in the bed of your truck, you ain't putting much anything else in there.
Yeah.
And you got 3 or 4 guys, and you're like, it's just impossible unless you're carrying a big trailer. So that's what makes the Lynx attractive, especially for guys that I know that are into the rivers and stuff like that. So a much, much smaller profile, much more manageable, not nearly as heavy. The thing that I'm just wary about this stuff in general, just from being a kayaker, and being a river guy, is I always have the fear of losing gear, because time after time you hear about this stuff, and that boat has that paddleboard feel on the top of it. So that's kind of where I haven't looked at it. I haven't seen it in person, just from video and stuff like that. So that's something I would be kind of scared of, is, how easy is this thing going to be to lose stuff off the deck? It looks really good and stable though. Like, I saw John Graves do some crazy stuff on the deck. He was retrieving a lure, and he was on the front of the boat, like totally like shoulder in the water, and that boat didn't look like it was trying to tip on him at all. So it'll be interesting to get around some people and have them, test it out. Like I said, we're going to interview John and get his opinion on it tomorrow, and that will air next week. And so it'll be interesting to see what he has to say about it, but I do know he's a big Hobie guy, so I don't think he's going to have too much negativity in regards to it. So,
yeah, it's like I said, I love Hobies. I don't know how much is too much as far as their models. Like, they got the Compass, they got the Passport, which I'm like, I can't even tell the difference between those two. They have the Outback, which is 12 feet. Then I have the PA-12, which I don't really understand why they have a PA-12 and an Outback that's 12 feet. Like, I would figure they would just have the PA-14 and that's it. But hey, I mean, who am I to tell Hobie what to do? They know how to run their business. The most popular kayak out there, most selling kayak company out there. So they obviously know a lot more than I do. I don't understand how many of those products out there. And they're really putting all their eggs in their basket, as they should, with that pedal drive. because it really is. They got a patent on it. Obviously, patents expire, and that's where you see Vibe coming up with it. So then Hobie has to, a lot of that technology they have to hold back to keep patents on what they have. They could have come out with the kick-up things a lot more, but they're going to hold off to it until the patent for the turbo fin goes out, because now they have a patent on this. And the same thing is going to be the 360 and whatever comes next. And they really, played that card well, because there's not a pedal drive out there they can compare to regardless of the price point. I'm not talking about price point. Everybody can make up their mind whether $5,000 is worth it or not. Yeah. If we're not looking at prices, there's nothing out there, pedal or paddle drive, not counting motors, that can compare to the 360. It just isn't. It just isn't.
I mean that, and I've talked to, I can't remember who we talked to about the 360 drive, but that the technology has been going into the Hobie pedal drives from the start, from what I understand, is usually taking years for them to figure out. Like they said, I think if I remember correctly, it took them 5+ years to figure out how to do the 360 drive. It took them a while to engineer it. Now, mind you, you're making a great point though, that they may have had it though for a couple of years, and we're like, let's not release this until this patent gets ready to drop, and then we'll release it. Yes, I think both things go hand in hand. The Hobie pedal drives, and this isn't. And by the way, like Hobie pedal drives, whether you're looking at Jackson's or whatever, everybody loves to bash the Jackson, drive. Yes, that first year and a half, 2 years, and people are still having problems with them. People are still having problems with the Hobie 360 drive. It's out there. I know it is. I see it all the time. But I don't hold it against them by any means. It's a thing that's going to happen with anything. You're going to get manufacturing defects, and especially when you have something that's new. And it's been tested, but has it really been tested is always a big question. Like, is it just being tested by a guy who takes it out a couple times and then he turns back the prototype back to the shop, versus a guy or girl who's fishing on the regular, 3 times a week, they're out for hours, and they're just, that thing heats up and they're just pounding away, and they're in deep water, shallow water, they're running into stuff, this stuff breaks, nothing is bulletproof. And so, that's why I'm always kind of like, it's like you said, do you want to spend the $5,000 on this technology? You know what I mean? Or are you comfortable with just paddling a kayak around? I think there's a time and a place for everything. I'm also big, like I've mentioned, and I'm going to keep mentioning it. There's a lot of this stuff I do think is overpriced, but it's overpriced for a reason, and it's because we buy it. If we keep continuing to buy it, it's going to be like that. Hobie's smart. They're like, their kayaks are on the expensive side. Well, they keep selling them. They make rock solid kayaks. They have a lot of technology that people wish their companies were coming out with. I mean, I've been in a Jackson big rig, and I love that kayak, and I know the drive system sucks in it. I hopefully will keep seeing that improve. Just like any of this stuff gets improved, the more input. Just the key is that company going to be receptive to the input and the negativity that they might receive on a product that's not doing the best? Can they make those changes? Because I really liked the system of what Jackson was thinking about, because they were making a system and they were like, we want a propeller system, but we want this thing to be able to kick back up if you go over something. And that dagger board system is awesome for that, man. I ran over stuff and I was like, dude, it just pops right back up. No problems. But, it's really, really engineered hardcore. A buddy of mine took one apart. He was like, it's so over engineered. It's insane. And you've got a company like Old Town, though. Their pedal drives are solid, man. They've got a great warranty on them. And everybody I know that's been in an Old Town has been like, dude, I love this pedal drive. They've also been doing it for a long time, though, too. When Jackson did it, they were late to the game. just about every manufacturer had a pedal drive except for Jackson at that time. There might have been one or two other ones like Bonafide and somebody else, but
Crescent.
Yeah. Well, Crescent wasn't even out yet, I don't think, when they made that first round of FDs for the Jacksons. And so I don't know, man. It's the Lynx, though. I think it's got its place. I don't know that it's that exciting to me personally.
We're talking about the 360?
No, the Hobie Lynx.
Oh, the Lynx. Okay, we're back.
Yeah. Go back to what we were talking about. Sorry, we kind of got off topic.
No, that's good.
But yeah, I think that I don't know that it's a little hype to me. I think that it's a cool idea though. I don't think it's really that exciting overall. Like it's just a different kind of platform they stuck their drive in, But I like to see that from Hobie because for a long time it wasn't like that. They weren't coming out with like a new design hull, different kind of kayaks like that. You had like kind of like smaller or bigger versions of the same kayak. Like you have a PA12, PA14, you have an Outback and a Compass like almost like a small Outback in a way, and then you got the Passport. And then so it was kind of refreshing just to see a new hull design and a new like platform like that for sure.
And I think again, I think it's hype too because it's really like $400 less than an Outback, but you're very limited. I want to say not limited because you can take it in some places where you, depending on the water access that you have, that might be harder to take an Outback or PA 360. But at the same time, I mean, open water on a lake, that I don't care how stable that is. That ain't going to be fun. If you're stuck, and all of a sudden you get hit by high winds or storm or something, better pray to God you make it sure because I don't care how stable that is. Don't tell me that's going to hold up that well. So it has its limitations. Yeah. Now, segueing into this, let's talk a little bit about the PA 360. Now, I own one, and I'm going to be honest with you. I think it's a game changer. And I'm going to start off with this one because this is why I bought it. I realize it's expensive. I had a Hobie Outback. I have a Hobie Outback, and that was actually I got the demo, so that was $2,500. But the sticker price is like retail price is like $3,000. The Outback 360 is $2,000 more, so you could really get 2 kayaks or 3 kayaks, depending which you want, for the price of a Hobie Outback 360. Why I think it's a game changer, because there's really nothing out there, again, that can compare to that as far as kayak goes. We're not talking about motors. I'm not saying that if you're on a Bonafide with a Spotlight, you're in a better position. That's fine, but we're not talking about that. I'll give you that. That's awesome. That's taking it to another level, but we're not talking about motors now. We're talking strictly about kayaks. Mm-hmm. And there's no kayak out there that can do that. My big thing I got it was like, well, I wanted to improve my game. I wanted a place where I can put my rods horizontal instead of vertically just sticking out. I broke so many rods and wasted so much time trying to untangle rods because I'm trying to get to this spot and I forget I have a rod in this low-hanging branch or tree or low-hanging bridge, and I break them, I tangle them, and I got tired of it. I found a lot of tournaments that I was like, I wish I can hold that spot, but I either gonna have to sacrifice how many rods I take with me, or I'm just gonna have to find another spot or waste a bunch of time trying to take him out of the back, put him in front of me, pedal, try to get to my spot, and then put him back on. So that was my main reason why I wanted to change out of the Outback. I love my Outback. It's probably the best designed Outback kayak out there. Talking about the Outback, just so angler friendly in so many features. But that design by the PA 360, even though I don't like the deck design as much, I love the fact that it had that horizontal storage. Vertical storage. Is that what I'm saying, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, horizontal storage. There we go. So the 360 was kind of like, okay, well, if I'm going to buy it, I'm going to go to the 360. And it saves you so much time on the water. The way that I like to fish, I like to go into deep creeks and rivers where you have access from the boat ramp. So being able to have those kick up fins and maneuver on. I mean, I've been on creeks that I can barely touch both sides of the bank, and I can still turn my PA 360 around with little to no effort. You pull up the skeg, you pull up the rudder, and you turn that thing to the side, and it'll turn on itself. That's a big plus. Not having to, when you have like an Outback or any other pedal drive kayak out there, you have to make like a U-turn. Where in this case, another thing that happens when you go into deep creeks, you're bound to get hung up on low branches or grass or riprap. Being able to just point your pedal drive and beeline it directly to where your bait is stuck, it's a major plus. It opens, to me, my style of fishing, it opened the door to me to open areas that I've always wanted to fish, but I didn't want to go through the hassle of it. Right. And it makes it quicker to retrieve your baits, to move around. And it does show up, to me, it does show in the results. When I fish on tournament, I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't have gotten to this spot. Plus, the added fact that thing, which blew my mind. I did not realize how fast that thing can pedal. It is extremely fast. It's a little heavy. It gets you tired quickly, but it goes really, really fast. So in my opinion, I do believe it's a game changer, even though it's price point, just because there's nothing out there.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, it's definitely a game changer. I think the fact that they were able to figure out something to make a heavy, big fishing kayak maneuverable like that is what the key was to the whole thing. And then they did add some design features within the hull itself that really stood out. I've always been really impressed with because I've never been in a 360, but I've seen a few of my buddies have them, and what they can do versus what I could do in like a big rig was just night and day difference. The whole PA14 360 platform is so angler friendly, it's unreal. Like, it is set up for fishing any lake you want to. Like, you know, it's a boat that you can get out on big water and feel comfortable on. The things like the system that they use for your why did I just forget it? For your fish finder and stuff like that, for the transducer, that's awesome. You know, that's a thing that people kind of get frustrated with, was having the arms over the sides of their kayaks, that sort of thing, and having side view, you know, and now they have a system where it can drop down and pull back up a little bit. That's awesome. The 360 drive itself, the whole concept of that is just, it's huge. It's a huge improvement that all kayak anglers wanted. We wanted to be able to slip in and out fairly easy within bank lines and that sort of thing. You know, you don't, and with like, say, like for me, it would just be a comparison to this. Say my buddy Mike comes up to a spot, he can paddle into it, fish, and if he needs to make adjustment because the wind is blowing him close to the bank, he's just kicking and it's moving sideways. As to where I have to circle back out of the spot and come back and make this, that's just a big giant waste of time. And a lot of pedal drives, man, it takes, you know, so they all vary. Obviously, some are going to be turning wider than others. But the fact that that Hobie made that 360 drive and gives you the option to move pretty much in any angle that you need to, and you're not having to move out of the exact spot that you're in. You know, you can just make small, minute adjustments and keep fishing. You know, so it was definitely a game changer. I remember seeing the video that they made where it looked like synchronized swimming. Whether, you know, there was like 3 of them all next to each other. And I was just like, dude, that is awesome. I was like, you know, and to be honest, like you kind of look at how these other systems are and you're like, I don't know how they would be able to do this without having the fin technology about it. Yeah. You know, that's the thing that makes it able to do that is Hobie's original drive system. The way it was set up looks so weird. You're like, you've got these fins and, you know, you're like, it was just, it's so different than what everybody else ended up coming up with. You know, they thought outside the box. It wasn't, hey, let's design this after what boats use, a boat motor, and, you know, we're going to build something that's not a prop, you know. And and it's evolved. Like you said, you've went from having the original Hobie drive system, and it added the 180 system, and then kick up fins, and then this, and now it's the 360 drive, and it's like they've constantly keep innovating that drive system, and when they came out the 360, everybody was just, yep, gotta have it. I mean, I knew people that were in other brands forever, and when that 360 drive came aboard, they jumped ship and went over to Hobie because they solved a problem that everybody had been complaining about, having issues about when it came to kayak fishing.
Yeah, that's true. So I think it's a game changer. Again, whether you want to spend $5,000 on it, it's another matter. If you can't afford it, then it's definitely not worth it.
I think what I'd like to see, dude, the most now from them is if they started adding that drive to all their lineup.
That's interesting. I don't know if they can. Well, they're not going to add it to the links. I'll think probably tip over or something because it's. I don't know. It's heavy though. The drive is heavy. I don't think if you can put that on an Outback, I can see how you eventually
an Outback would be
crack.
Awesome.
It would be. They would have to redesign a little bit of the hull because I think that thing you will crack the hull.
Really?
With that Outback, it's a lot heavier. Yeah. A lot have been said about the drive. I've only used it for a while. I use it like 2 or 3 times a week. I've had it for 3 months. I haven't had a problem with the drive. I think a lot of people. Well, first of all, from what I understand, the drive, when it first came out, the first generation was, I think, like plastic bearings. Since then, from what I've been told by the kayak shop, is their metal bearings. The one that I got, which is more like a second generation drive, does come with metal bearings. If you have the plastic bearings and you break it, they will replace them. As long as it's on warranty, which it should. Because I think it's only been out 2 years, and the warranty I think is 3 years, something like that. Oh, I'm not sure, but they'll replace it with the middle ones. I think that really solved like 90% of the issues with the drive. There's always going to be defects, and a lot of it is like, what is a person putting it through? Like if you're talking about a kayak angler that's on Baffin Bay in Corpus Christi, which is super saline water, and rubbing it against shallow oyster beds, I don't care what drive you have, that thing is going to break eventually.
Yeah.
And it's going to break before the warranty is over. If we're talking about that, I know I saw a video of a guy that had to complain about it, but same thing. He fished on saltwater, super saline saltwater, oyster beds. I'm like, yeah, it's going to break. That's not a fair adjustment. If anything you put through that grinder, it's going to break. Yeah. Especially with that high content of saltwater and sulfite.
Yep.
A lot of things, I think a lot of people make mistakes. And I come from a mountain bike background, meaning that before I started kayak fishing, I did a lot of mountain biking. One of the things that I learned about mountain biking is a lot of people would use this like WD-40 to clean out the gears on their pedals and on their derailleurs. That's a big no-no. I know people that actually do that with the Hobie 360. The problem with that is you don't pressure wash them and you don't use products like WD-40 because what it does, that dissolves not only the rust, which it's not going to have rust, but it dissolves the grease and the oils that are meant to be there to lubricate it. If you start cleaning it with products like that, you're going to run off the grease that's there, the lubes that there, and eventually it's gonna break. If you pressure wash them, it's the same thing as with the mountain bike. You don't pressure wash it. It is not meant, because now you're getting moisture into those deep seals where moisture is not supposed to be. You're also washing away some of the grease that's meant to be there. So if you are considering, or if you have a Hobie PH or any drive, don't use those type of products. They're not meant for that. Do not pressure wash them. I know guys that do that and then they complain that it's not working. It's not working because you're not giving the right maintenance. You're over cleaning it. Yep. Just read the manufacturers, go to the Hobie forums and ask them, what product should I use? How should I clean it? And they'll give you a straight answer, better answer than I can give you. But just be mindful of how you're cleaning it. There is such a thing as over maintenance, and I see a lot of guys doing it.
Yeah, power washing anything mechanical like that's usually on the bad side. I used to ride motocross back in the day, and I don't know if you remember this, Armando, but do you remember, how motocross has the shocks up front and you got the big fork shots? And back in the day, they used to put those tubes around them. That was like a collapsible style, like accordion looking tubing over your fork. They found out later that those things were worse than what they were originally made to do, which was to protect it from dirt. Well, when you're riding motocross, dirt gets in there no matter what. It doesn't. They weren't blocking anything. So what was happening is that the dirt and stuff traps and stays in there. And so when you go to wash it, a lot of guys weren't taking it off because they were assuming that it was protected, and there was actually stuff trapped in there. Well, eventually they started removing those. Well, then everybody was power washing their bikes also. And so you hit motors with power washing, you can do it, and if you're safe with it. But one of the bad things is when they would do their forks, and those forks have this seal that's on the top of it. And if you hit it at the right angle, you're going to shove water and debris down inside on the backside of those, inside of the seal itself. And 9 times out of 10, like within a month, you've got a leaky seal right there on your forks. So it makes sense. Like, be gentle with it. If you're really trying to do a good job cleaning, then bust out stuff that isn't going to dissolve grease, but wash whatever you need to wash off. Most of the stuff you're going to have on a drive system that is in water is not going to be oil-based. You don't have to worry about it being like, gunked up to where you need to use something that's going to dissolve oil. Like a mild detergent. I wouldn't even trust using Dawn because of it, because Dawn is such a good grease fighter. You might be able to do it just a little bit, but it's about wiping off some good fresh water and, maybe a little bit of elbow grease, but, definitely, you can power blast that plastic all day long on the hull and everything. But when it comes to the things that are mechanical, definitely don't use power washers on them.
Definitely not. Well, Josh, thank you so much for coming up to the show. I really appreciate it. I've had you here for almost an hour, so I know you're a family, man. You got your kids, so thank you so much for joining us, man. It's a fun episode. Always honored to have you on the show, and looking forward to the final cast, man. Next episode, that's going to be exciting.
Yeah.
Next week, what do you have? Yeah, go ahead.
Next week,
go ahead. That was going to ask.
Yeah, next week it'll be Hobie Links. This Thursday we have. Actually, I've got it sitting right here. The company is called Atola, and they sent us a eyeglass, or a sunglass retainer system. So it's something new, something we hadn't done before. So we were really excited to kind of do the episode and got to learn some stuff about it. You can kind of hear my opinion about it, because at first I was a little freaked out by it because I was like, man, that thing looks uncomfortable. But it ended up not really being that bad at all. So it's kind of a cool episode to learn something that looks so simple, and some of the stuff that they, what they thought about, and the testing and, the product development, what they had to put in regards to come up with something to see, and so it's pretty cool, and it's a good episode. And that'll be on this week. So.
Perfect. And for those out there listening, you can check it out. You can go out to our library on Pedal and Fin and look for the final cast. We have a bunch of product reviews. What's been your favorite product review that you've reviewed?
I don't really necessarily have a favorite product review. There's guests that we have that come on that are, it's a fun time to talk to them. And, especially when that they're super knowledgeable in what they're talking about. One good one always is Glenn Young from Z-Man. He's always a great interview. He's a really nice person. He likes to joke around with me and Brad. He's gotten comfortable with us. And so that's always a good one. And I don't know, man, there's times where, sometimes I'm like, I don't know how the interview will go. And, you get pleasantly surprised by, certain people that you talk to. So, I really like people who are receptive to criticism. I always get afraid to interview somebody and point out a con or an issue that I might see with the product, and have the fear of them not reciprocating it very well. You know what I mean? Like they might not receive it well. They might get offended. And I'm like, it's not our show is not intended to do that by any means. We just like to give an honest, unbiased opinion on stuff that we've tried or we get our hands on. And then that way our listeners and, the kayak industry or kayak community can form their own opinions about it. It's like we were just talking about, like we talk about the Hobie 360, and I have buddies that are Hobie 360 guys, and they will trash the Jackson kayak system. Chris Anderson, Mike Grimsley. I'm going to point them out just because they're my buddies. I love them. That doesn't matter. But they, and they both had bad experiences with it. And, but at the same time, like I've talked about before, I've seen the Hobie 360 drives have their issues. It doesn't matter to me, really. You know what I mean? All this stuff. Here's the thing is nobody ever, a lot of times you're not going to see the uproar unless it's negative. Like a lot of times, if you're having a good time with your product, you're just enjoying it. And 9 times out of 10, you're really not saying much about it. And that's what's cool about us having the podcast, because we have kind of a voice for it. We can be like, hey, here's what we found about this, that, A, B, and C, like whatever. But, it's, I'm a big believer that everything has its issues. Yeah. There's good and there's bad. It always will be like that, and 9 times out of 10, when you're reading something about it, a lot of times it tends to be on the negative side, because that's the people who are going to speak up about it. And, whether or not you want to believe in what they're talking about is another thing, but I mean, the more people there are, though, then obviously you do start to see that there's an issue here or there. Like when we learned about the Motor Guide remote, like that might be an issue, because Brad's talked to a few people about it, and they've been like, yeah, I'm on my 3rd or 4th remote, and be like, all right, that might be something they need to take a look at and fixing, but it is what it is. It's nothing new to the world of, industrial products. You make something and stuff's going to break, what you thought worked, it may not work, for the long term. It might be a short term thing. So it's like the Hobie replacing those bearings. It's something simple like that. Did they intend to use plastic? Probably. Why? They didn't want it to break, but they thought, hey, how can we save weight? This thing is already heavy. What do we have to really add metal bearings? First go around? No. Second go around? Yeah, we need to replace it, because we are sending out these stupid things and we don't want to replace entire drive systems, whatever. So, it is what it is, but I don't know. I like doing it. I like talking about the products. I have a good time doing it. I like to talk about kayak fishing.
The only I think drawbacks, you have to, put up with Brad. But other than that,
he grows on you like a wart,
like cancer,
like a wart you can't get rid of.
All jokes aside, Brad, just give him a little grief for not showing up, but we love Brad.
Armando, thanks for having me on, man.
Wow,
I always enjoy
my
doing
pleasure.
pods.
It's my pleasure, man. And for those out there listening, if you made it this far, we really appreciate it. We thank you. Be safe on the water. As always, I always preach, take the necessary precautions to, make sure you get home to your loved one. Congratulations to everybody that took part in the Hobie BOS, and Brian Scarberry, I think, won the Hobie BOS. And then the Bassmaster Kayak Series Classic, if I'm naming it right, is coming next week. And we may have an interesting episode, me and Brian Schuler, about that. But congratulations.
Did you see the flooding they got today?
Yeah, that's crazy. Well, I live right close to PK, and it's crazy, man. Today, though, today I was like, good Lord, like at 8 o'clock, the clouds, the sky went so dark. I was like, is it night? What time is it? It got really bad. It got really, really bad. So guys out there that are taking part on that tournament, please be safe, guys. Let's make sure everybody makes it home, because it's crazy. PK is really, we're really getting a downpour here in Texas. So hopefully by the time the tournament rolls around, it'll be a little bit safer. But yeah. Well, thanks again. Have a great night, everyone.
See ya. Peace.
Thanks for tuning in to another killer episode on Paddle and Fin. Don't forget to go check out our website at paddle_and_fin.com. Don't forget to check out the YouTube channel at Paddle and Fin. If you got a question, comment, want to hear from a future guest on a future episode, feel free to email us at paddle_and_fin@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Paddle and Fin on Facebook and Instagram. Shout out to our show supporters, Angler. The Angler button and app just makes for a better time on the water and creates a virtual logbook for every fishing outing out on the water. Shout out to Rocktown Adventures, located in Northern Illinois, for all your kayaking, camping, and hiking needs. Shout out to Jig Masters Jigs. When in doubt, get the jig out. Go to jigmasters.com.